Well, hello and good day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are back for another women's hormones episode. And I noticed that someone was asking, well, wait, where was part one? This was actually a webinar that we did not that long ago that Dr. Stephanie and I actually had done. Can I have one of our angels give us the date and information for that? Um, so that was actually something that we covered and talked about the DNA, the sex hormone pathway chart. I walked through mine to kind of give you all an idea about how we determine the genetic hormone profiles from our reports, different genes that's associated with that determination, with how all of that works, as well as how it affects hormone replacement therapy. And we talked about that. And we've actually done several webinars speaking on women's health, women's hormones. And we are going to continue to do so, diving in a little bit deeper, a little bit more specific on certain areas. So the area for tonight that we are going to be talking about is really going to be focusing more on that weight gain, that change in hormones that affects our metabolism as we are going through entering perimenopause and going into menopause and even postmenopausal. So I have the delight and honor to be joined with Dr. Stephanie Nielsen once again, the brilliant, vivacious doctor. So glad to have you here with us again. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you tonight?
I am excellent. So I would say, I know for me, a lot of the women that I work with in these programs and, as even personal clients, they are in this age range from, say, mid to late 30s in all the way up to even mid late 70s, even early 80s. And this is really catching that area of women in the perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopausal, region. And a lot of them do deal with that issue, me included, with that weight gain, with the change in our hormones that affect that. And I know that in a way there is a vanity portion, because we all want to, look good in the clothes we're wearing, but even more so, we want to feel good in our own bodies. What have you found with the clients, with the knowledge that you have, as well as being a Wiley protocol, certified practitioner? Where are you finding to be the most or strongest pain points with your clients?
Well, I want to address a couple things. First of all, so people said, where was the number one? It was about a week, maybe a week and a half ago that Dr. Varden and I did this, and we had so many people on and we had so many questions that we said we'd do a part two. And then Janice said, hey, is this going to be just weight gain? Because if so, she was going to pop off. I would say it's not going to be just weight gain. There is going to be a primary focus on going through menopause, postmenopause, genes related to female transitions. But a lot of that has to do with mood and weight. And so there will be an emphasis there. So all of our webinars can be watched if you go to the DNAcompany.com. We have our previous webinars, we have our previous podcasts. And so I see a note that says April 1st. Okay.
Yes, I found it.
Great. So I'm glad you found it. So I guess it was longer. Gosh, it seems like it was just last week. I looked at my schedule. I'm like, well, I did one on the 23rd. It must have been that one. But I didn't have the title of that one. So I guess it was almost a month ago we did it. So you'll be able to see the April 1st was the beginning of it. And there was just so much interaction and so many things that were covered that people said, hey, can you tell us more? And a big part of that that we didn't get to address was really, what is this whole menopausal weight gain? Your, you know, stomach spreads, everything starts layering. And so we thought we would address a lot of that.
Yeah, because I mean, really, when we're talking about metabolism, it's not just about the weight gain. We're also talking about the activity, the functioning of the mitochondria itself,
Mhm.
through the system of how well is our body producing the energy that we need to do all of the things. And guess what, ladies? That affects our brain functioning too, our
Yeah.
cognitive ability. And that's where the brain fog comes in. That is associated to our metabolism.
Mhm.
So, there very much is more than just the weight gain. It's just that oftentimes that seems to be the most obvious or focused on symptom that happens, that downstream thing, you know, that's also most visible,
Mhm.
that thing that sometimes usually bothers us first, because a lot of times, oh, brain fog, well, we can associate that to many different things, which absolutely, yes, we can. But it very definitely is also part of the fact of our hormones changing and the nosedive of the amount of hormones that we have available to us.
Well, and one of the things that I can tell you for myself is I used to watch women that were 10 or 20 years ahead of me go from being what I thought were really attractive, fit, beautiful, progressive in that they were educated and high functioning. And then all of a sudden it was like overnight they lost themselves. And I was like, I will never be one of those women who, gains the weight and goes, becomes slumpy and loses her wow. And let me tell you what happened. I did not understand at that time that part of menopause is your hormones, your estrogen in particular, decreases. And as it decreases, because your ovaries stop producing it, the body goes, hey, I like estrogen. I still want some. So, what it does is it puts on this layer of fat. I went from this, you know, teeny waist to all of a sudden a thick waist and couldn't get that hourglass back. And I'm like, where the heck did this come from? And I went from my clothes fitting to having the Dunlap over the top. And I was like, wait a minute. So I started calorie restricting. All I did was lose muscle mass. I started, over exercising. All I did was fatigue myself. It wasn't into, and I wasn't with the DNA company then. And so, and this was almost 12 years ago now. I was like, something is wrong. I need help. I mean, I set up 911 signals. So I called my physician girlfriends, I called my physician pharmacist friends, and I'm like, okay, I know nothing about this BHRT thing, but we got to talk because this is not working. My brain wouldn't work. My sleep was disturbed. I was hot flashing, and I went, oh my goodness, I am too young to feel this crappy. And so that was the start of my journey. Um, I I have since forgiven my ego of, oh, that'll never happen to me. I've always been slender. I've always been capable. I've always been to just hit like a train wreck. And, I was at 48 going up to about 52 when that was happening. But now I have friends who are 34, 36, 38, and I can recognize the symptoms in them. And it is sad for me to see these women in their young 30s going through this due to toxins in their environment or things they've been exposed to that are disrupting their hormones. So I think that's why it's really important that people get their DNA done, people get their lab tests done, and we can really talk to you a little bit about how to optimize or at least slow down that onslaught so that you can then get back on the train. Because Dr. Varden's back on the train. I'm back on the train. I lost those 20 pounds. Every now and then I kind of see him doing a little bit of this. If I play with my hormones, my weight changes for sure. Sometimes I get, and people say, oh, you're getting too skinny. You're getting too skinny. You're looking, really drawn. And so I'll put a little bit on. But honestly, we all know where we feel the best. And that's where I want you to stay, because when you feel your best, you will perform your best, both your brain, mentally, emotionally, physically, and above. So, Dr. Barton, where do you want to take it from here, baby?
Well, I was thinking it would be great to bring up the poll and see where some of the
Yeah.
pain points are that our audience has.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, my angels. You guys are awesome. All right. So in our questions, our first question was, which of the following symptoms have you experienced in the past 6 months? And this was a select all that apply. And it looks like our biggest one with 63% is low energy or brain fog. So yeah, absolutely. I've been there a few times. And next runner up was the sleep issues at almost 60%. And that really works into the other symptoms that we're talking about, because that is going to affect your energy levels, brain fog. That is going to affect the next highest ranked one, which was the unexplained weight gain. When you're not getting that sleep, it throws off other hormones as well. Leptin and ghrelin, the hunger hormone and the satiation hormone, which we're going to talk about a little bit. Um, you know, Sleep really is that foundational aspect that just makes us feel better. It's when our body is doing that repair, is, processing the toxins and, really helping to clean us out. And, when we're not getting good sleep because our sex hormones are off and our other hormones and everything is going haywire, it's kind of like a chicken or the egg type of thing. And it just is, unfortunately, this spiraled issue of chaos that our body's almost feeling like it's working against us. And it's like, why is this doing this? So there's also a mental aspect to it, that emotional piece, especially when you don't have the energy and you have the brain fog. It certainly doesn't help, which works into the next one, which is the emotional swings and anxiety. So, it's a shame that we, as women, as we are going through these transitions, get pigeoned like that, in the way of, oh, well, you're just, that's just the way you're going through, or, when we're having our periods or whatever. And it's just like, no, there's a biochemical reasoning for this. There is more to it. And we don't have to go through it as severely, especially when we start becoming educated and can support our bodies and do the things necessary to alleviate those types of symptoms. So glad that you are here. And yes, we are going to be discussing these things. Second question, have you ever had your hormones tested, whether it be by blood, saliva, urine? And we have actually, the majority of you, only 3% said no, and they're not interested. 28% said no, but you are curious. But the majority, we're talking, like 70% of you have said yes. Recently, or maybe not within the last year, but at least you have had it tested. So your awareness of having, a baseline, or at least seeing where you are at the time, that's wonderful. Really, that works into that test, don't guess. Because definitely with hormones, you don't want to be guessing, especially if you are going to be implementing herbal supplements, major changes, hormone replacement. You've got to know, where are you starting, and then how is that therapy working for you? Our third question, how familiar are you with DNA-based health testing? And it's wonderful to see that, around 75% of you said, yes, you are familiar, with over 40% saying that you're very familiar. You've already done one, where only, less than 25% said that you're not familiar, but you want to learn more. So you're in the right place. And we are going to be talking about some of the genes that we report in our DNA 360 reports, how they influence what we are talking about tonight, hormones, metabolism, and how they affect a woman's way of working through menopause, through that transition. And our final question, what support would help you most right now? And I love this. More than half of you said all of the above. So talking about all of the above, 22% of you said understanding your hormones. And yes, that's just like, obviously that is a huge, umbrella, because our hormones include more than just our sex hormones, even though that is something that we are going to be focusing on a little more specifically, but also the hormones that complement that, things like cortisol, okay, that stress hormone, leptin and ghrelin, which I had already mentioned, that deal with our hunger and satiation. And then we also have the other choices included boosting energy and metabolism, which was our second runner-up, finding the right foods for your body, which absolutely, we definitely work into that in our DNA 360 reports and our diet nutrition, as well as cardiovascular, really taking a look at the entire spectrum that we cover and how that works into what is best for your body. Foods, and also toxins that could be in foods, or foods that are acting like toxins in your body. And then finally, getting a personalized health plan, because that is exactly what we do, using your DNA as that foundational blueprint. Can't get much more personalized than that. And so building on that, using other testing that we provide, whether it be your DNA Gut 360, your microbiome test, blood tests, your DNA aging, all of these things help to enrich that picture that is you, to give you an even more personalized health plan, so we can work with you, for you, so you can move forward in your health optimization. So thank you so much for answering those questions. They really provide us insights on how to focus these webinars.
I know one of the things that I think is, and we've done whole webinars on this, is the GLP-1s. I'm sure you've either tried it or somebody who's on Ozempic or Mounjaro or Zepbound, or they're having something compounded. As a pharmacist, I can tell you that I love peptides, and insulin is a peptide, and the GLP-1s are peptides. But those are actually natural peptides that our body produces to do what it's supposed to do, which is make you feel satisfied and to help the body burn. However, what I'll tell you is, when you get selectively isolated peptides, you can do as much harm as you do good. And when it comes to menopause weight gain, part of what you need to figure out for you, and these are a few things that Dr. Lara and I are going to talk about, is it your leptin, ghrelin? Is one of those off? Is it that estrogen is too high and generally it's too low? Is it going down the right pathway? Are your mitochondria, which are your little powerhouses in the cells, have they started winding down where it's like, doo? So I can tell you, for me, it wasn't about the calories. It wasn't about fat and carbohydrates. For me, it was about firing up those mitochondria. And there is a mechanism called AMPK. Now, I'm going to tell you specifically what AMPK is, but with our DNA, I love what AMPK can do. So AMPK is an activated protein kinase, and the actual name is adenosine 5 monophosphate, so AMPK, activated protein kinase. And the great thing about that is that affects all of these. Estradiol goes in, endorphins go in, insulin goes in, the ghrelin goes in, the leptin goes in, your corticosteroids go in. All of these are impacted by AMPK. So if I would say there was one place to start on anybody who's going, I've got that stubborn weight loss. One, get your DNA so we can look at your pathways and see which pathways you're going to head down. Two, when you're looking at lab work, yes, it's great to have your estrogen, progesterone, but I want to see your whole comprehensive metabolic panel, which most of your doctors will do once a year or so to see how your everything else is regulating. But AMPK can really fire up that energy. And since the number one thing we saw in that first question was, my energy is dragging, my poop is popped. I don't have anything left. I think AMPK is a really great thing for you to research. A big part of what we do here is educate, but then we need you to take the ball and run an experiment with yourself. Now, Dr. Gabby is one of our support personnel, and she's also a pharmacist. And I've seen her in the chat offering some complimentary one-on-one consultations. So if you're like, I want to get my DNA done, or I've gotten my DNA, but I don't know which way to go. First of all, Dr. Lara, do you want to talk a little bit about our app and how people can log into the app to get a little more info as we start going down through some of the DNA genes that they should look at?
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you, I talk about our app to everyone I meet. I just absolutely love it. It is just everything, just about everything, all at your fingertips. So the app is called the DNA Way, and it is available on Apple, on the Android, on whatever phone you have, you will be able to download this. So just go to your app store, type in the DNA Way, and you can download that. And what it has is, like, in the top when you first open it up. And by the way, you don't have to have your DNA 360 you don't have to have that in order to make use of what our app offers. It is there, to have the information. So when you download it and you create a login, at the very top, we have where you can actually sign up to any and all of our future webinars. Mm-hmm. And then it has information. Actually, I'm going to open this up. And I don't know if you guys will be able to see this. Okay, it's loading. Well, my phone is being a little slow. So anyway, in the first column, it has where you can actually sign up for future webinars. Then we have our podcasts, so you can just click right on that and listen to that. Then we have our DNAgeless blog in the next column. And at the bottom, you can actually take a look at and watch our previous webinars. So it's not like you have to go searching in YouTube if you don't want to. Everything is right there. And we're actually going to be adding a section for our DNA Talks Digest. So we've already published our 4th issue at the beginning of this month. And so there's 4 fantastic issues for you to read, the articles, all the wonderful information. Our last issue covered fertility and bone health, really focusing on women. Yes, we also focus on men, but we really support our women audience out there, because unfortunately science and a lot of other medical informational support, we are really underrepresented and underserved in that respect. So we are here to do that with cutting edge information, with the latest science and real work. The information that we have, that we have curated and have such wonderful contributing authors giving their insights too. So that's all at your fingertips. And if you have had your DNA 360 done, you can actually access your information right from there with great information, your reports, everything's right there. Also, another thing that if you have had another DNA test done, for example, 23andMe, you can actually upload your TXT file in that and we can generate information for you. Now, will it be as complete as what we offer? No, because there are certain genes and copy number variants and indels that they don't do, but we can certainly provide an enriched amount of information for you at least to work off of and learn from. So fantastic app. I do highly recommend it to everyone. So jumping back over to our hormones, to metabolism, I wanted to share with you all a little bit of information about what happens when we start going into perimenopause and menopause, when our estrogen declines, and how that affects our metabolism more specifically, that appetite regulation that I gave you, a little bit of a whetting of appetite earlier about. And one thing that you need to realize that estrogen is so important in so many ways. It helps to regulate insulin sensitivity. It helps to regulate glucose metabolism. And also, as Dr. Stephanie has already talked about that fat distribution. As estrogen declines, particularly estradiol, that's E2, because there's three main estrogens, E1, E2, E3. So estradiol I'm talking about. Women become more insulin resistant, and that can lead to increased fat storage, especially that visceral fat, the fat that accumulates around the organs underneath the muscles, which actually is the more dangerous fat deposition that we have to be careful of. When we're talking about appetite regulation that I had mentioned before, estrogen helps to modulate appetite through the two hormones I'd mentioned, leptin and ghrelin, and serotonin pathways. And with lower levels of estrogen, hunger and cravings can increase. And when you start having the increased hunger and cravings, depending on what your genetic predisposition is or profile for mood and behavior, say your particular profile lends toward binging, that it's harder for you to stop eating. And generally this would work into the FTO gene. I have this issue. It's hard for me to go to buffets and to stop eating because there's a delay in my gut telling my brain, hey, you're full. And so when my estrogen decreases and I have to deal with this dysregulation of my leptin, of my serotonin, making me have more hunger and more cravings. And I already have a hard time stopping eating my favorite foods and, or at buffets and everything else. I mean, you talk about a bit of a catastrophe where I can just, eat way too much. It can be difficult, especially when you don't understand what's going on and you don't have the knowledge ahead of time to head those things off at the pass.
So Lara, do you find you'll eat, tell yourself you're satisfied, people around the table are starting to slow down, and you get a surge and you're still hungry and you go back for more? Because that's me. It's like I'll eat my whole meal. I'm like, this has been the perfect amount. I've been so well. And then it's like, if I get up to start cleaning the dishes or something, it's like I'm eating the whole time because it's like, oh, I need a handful of nuts. Oh, I need to have some more berries. Oh, there's just a little bit left in the pan and it goes in my mouth. And it's like, I just ate a whole meal, but my
Yes.
mouth is saying, ah.
Especially when it's right there.
Mhm.
Because it's like you're cleaning up, you're putting the food away. Oh, just a couple things you pop in your mouth. It's so easy and we don't think about it. And then we lose track of going, oh my gosh, how many calories did I just ingest?
Really?
Especially with calorically dense foods like the nuts, the cheese, or these fattier foods. It's like it goes down so easy and it makes me feel good and it increases my dopamine. And it's like, and then we get in this spiral wanting to beat ourselves up, going, oh shit, I just ate all that. And it's like, oh no, I feel awful. And it just gets into this spiral.
So I want to know how many people on here tonight do that. They eat, because we're talking about the FTO gene, which deals with fat mass and obesity. And so, how many people eat their whole meal and then they keep snacking afterwards while they're cleaning up or while they're sitting chatting? Put a 1 in if you can relate to this, because you may have an FTO gene that's broken, like Lara and I. Or put a 2 if you're like, no, I eat. Oh, yeah, Crystal. Crystal's like 1 exclamation part. Like, baby, you got my number. So part of knowing, all you ones, this is not necessarily your fault. This is part of your genes. So we want to give you a solution for what you can do. And Jennifer says, I would if I didn't pre-plan and count every gram. Okay. Well,
And I'll
then
tell
you're
you,
lucky. You're a 2 that this doesn't happen to you. Because the rest of us so far, everybody else is, I'm a 1, I'm a 1, I'm a 1.
and I'll tell you that really it makes you have to have that much more discipline.
Mhm.
And when you don't have a lot of energy, when you are not getting a lot of sleep, that discipline, that ability to keep that discipline,
Mhm.
it is tough.
So what's your first trick for having that going on?
Well, what I do is one, I go in, okay, for example, if I'm doing like a dinner party or if I'm having people over, um, one, I will have a something that will help to fill me a little bit, before they get there, so I don't overeat.
Mhm.
um and I'll also do like a glass of water with some apple cider vinegar,
Mhm.
to help with the blood sugar regulation, again, to help kind of have a little bit of that full feeling, just so I'm not ravenous by the time we actually sit and eat. But I also go into it with the mindset of being aware, of being present in what I am doing and what I am putting in my mouth, not just, talk, 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 which, obviously dinner parties, that's what you do, but to not mindlessly put the food in my mouth, smaller portions. And then once that's done, stop, or if I do just have a little bit, but really it's being more mindful, that to me has been one of the biggest things that I need to do. And to be aware that if I am going, oh, I feel hungry, or even though I know my body doesn't need more nutrition or more food, then I'll drink some water, or I will get busy doing something else and quickly just close, the food up and put it away. But that gets into being mindful, paying attention to what I'm doing. What do you do?
Well, you're being very mindful. Some of us are just reactive. So I try to go into practical. And my practical is only fat and protein start creating my favorite hormone, which is cholecystokinin. And
Mhm.
cholecystokinin, it's what shuts off I'm hungry. So if we talk about appetizers, most appetizers are carbohydrates. Oh,
Mm.
you've got your nachos, you've got your potatoes, you've got layers of, stuff that you're dipping or whatever. Okay. So I go for only protein and fat type appetizers. Maybe I'll do hard boiled eggs. Maybe I'll do, if we're having tapas, we'll do the little sausages or something of that long. I find if I eat fat first, then I start to coat my stomach and I start to regulate my blood sugar. Blood sugar regulation is a real big key one for me. I like what you said about you'll eat before. I might have 2, 3, 4 pieces of turkey. Now, somebody might say, that, oh my gosh, you've eaten almost a whole meal. I would eat 4 pieces of turkey before I went, but that's okay because then I'll eat lighter. I like what Ava says. She says that
Yes.
she brushes her teeth or puts a little peppermint oil because she doesn't want to ruin that on her mouth. That's a great one, Ava. I like that. So fat and protein I will have. Then, if I'm going to have a drink, I avoid all the sweet syrupy things. So I try to have things that have club soda in them. I try to do club soda and lime, like a citrusy, light, effervescent on my tongue. Yes, I might have a margarita, but I'll have an extra skinny where I might just have a little bit of a mezcal and a little bit of a club soda or tonic. I love, but I tend not to have tonic because that has sugar in it. So if I can have things that are drier, more savory, that I savor, whether I have a small drink that I sip on, so that I get the whole wonderful mouth effect and the whole social affect, but I'm not stuck in, oh my gosh, that was so good with a sangria. Pound that one. I didn't even feel like it, but I feel so good now. I'll have another one and then another one. When they bring those endless pictures of, if you ever gone to one of the Argentinian steakhouses, now I love those because I can have all the protein that I want. But, if you have the endless bottles of sangria, that sugar has spiked and then everything becomes ravenous. So think protein and fat early on. I love the idea of carrying some peppermint oil. That's great. I love being mindful. I wish I was that disciplined and that thoughtful. I tend to be more in the wall. But what other suggestions do you guys have that you use when you're wanting to do it? Donna says she's a 2 because she is just so strict because she can't lose weight. Donna, I'm going to wonder if you're so strict that you're not locking yourself up. So I want you to put in the Q&A if you've done your DNA, because I'd like us to talk about that. Being super strict and you still can't budge, that doesn't make sense, because that means that there is something in the DNA broken. And like Dr. Lara was talking about, insulin sensitivity is another one. So how many of you know what your hemoglobin A1C is? Because what we notice is the older we get, that hemoglobin A1C creeps up. Why? Because the insulin sensitivity is going down. So now a lot of people are wearing the continuous glucose monitors, so you can monitor your glucose, okay? Fasting is one thing, but do you know what you're eating that causes a spike or a drop? Because if you don't, that may be very helpful. That may be very helpful.
Yeah, and it's even good to get your fasting insulin levels checked.
Mm-hmm.
Not just blood glucose, which is just a single snapshot of that day. That's where the hemoglobin A1C comes in, because that is an average for the last 3 months.
Right.
But knowing your fasting insulin levels actually can be very helpful to go, okay, well, where exactly are your insulin levels? But I love the continuous glucose monitors, because that really shows you the dynamics of the foods you're eating, but not just the foods you're eating, but the order in which you eat them. I have had several clients, and I actually have them do this test where I say, okay, you're wearing your continuous glucose monitor. I want you to track these things. And then I want you to take a meal that has protein, fat, complex carbohydrates, and even starches, and, some sweetness. Okay. And I said, what I want you to do is I want you to eat that meal, the exact same meal, but switch around the order in which you eat them. So whether you do, like you were saying, a lot of the hors d'oeuvres, yeah, are carbohydrates and sweets and different things like that. If you ate that first, then your complex carbohydrates, then your protein and fats, and then the next time do your protein and fats first, then the complex carbohydrates, and then the carbs or the starches, or whatever it is. So, and you know what? They found that their blood glucose, that curve was different exact same foods, just the order in which they ate it created different, it didn't spike as much when they ate the fat and protein first. Or if they ate the complex carbohydrates, then the fat and protein, but had that, sugary dessert or, the bread last. So really, really interesting. Also, a couple other things to do. I had already mentioned about drinking the glass with the apple cider vinegar, like a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in it beforehand, because that helps to regulate the blood sugar as you're eating your food. But also taking a walk after your meal is a wonderful way to help, have that blood sugar regulated, because our muscles are a fantastic glucose sink. And what I mean by that is that when muscle works, in order for the energy for that muscle to do the work, it uses glucose. So it will pull the glucose out of the blood into the muscle fibers to use that as fuel. So the food and the glucose that is produced from the meal that you had going for a walk will help burn that and then keep your blood sugar levels lower. So little things that can make a big difference, that are free, by the way.
Absolutely.
So a couple things that I wanted to mention about the sex hormones as we are going through these transitions and how they continually affect our metabolism. Going back or finishing up with the estrogen before we dive into what progesterone does. Estrogen also influences thyroid hormone receptors. Now, a drop in estrogen can make cells less responsive to thyroid hormones, which reduces your basal metabolic rate, your BMR. So your basal metabolic rate means that is basically how many calories you burn while at rest. So obviously we want to burn a lot of calories at rest. And that also works into the amount of muscle mass that you have, because the more muscle you have, the more calories that you burn, which I've already kind of alluded to, with the walking. But what ends up happening is the thyroid, okay, that is like your metabolism thermostat, and that helps to regulate that. So when you have a less responsive thyroid and that basal metabolic rate drops, you're not burning as many calories at rest. Well, that's not really what what we want. So this is also another reason to make sure and to check your estrogen levels, to see what you can do to help support. Jumping over to progesterone. Progesterone has a beautiful calming effect. It also can act as an anti-inflammatory and helps to balance the stimulating effect of estrogen. Well, the one problem is that when you have lower progesterone levels, that can lead to things like fluid retention, slower digestion, and blood sugar instability, similar to estrogen. I mean, both of them, it's like you're getting hit from both sides of having your blood sugar be unstable. And it indirectly contributes to the weight gain and reduced metabolic efficiency. Estrogen is more direct. But either way, it's kind of like, getting kicked in the ass a couple different ways. We're talking about having our hormones tank. But let's talk about testosterone, because our testosterone changes as well. And yes, women need testosterone. And although it is lower, our testosterone levels are lower than men, testosterone in women, that helps to maintain our lean muscle mass. That is really important for metabolically active tissue. That's what's helping us, to move and burn and, have that build into that metabolic flexibility, in burning the glucose. Okay. But it also is related to longevity and to bone health. So as testosterone drops, so does muscle mass. And that leads to a lowering resting metabolic rate and difficulty maintaining a healthy weight. So this goes to show you that the three main sex hormones that most people are aware of, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, those things, when they start to decrease while we are going through this life transition, that is how it's affecting our metabolism, the weight gain, and also the other symptoms that we deal with. Is there something you would like to add to that? Maybe some things that you have noticed in clients and yourself related to those changes?
Well, I think the first thing is there's three ways to test your hormones. So there's blood, which is a spot in time. If you're still ovulating, we want to make sure what time of the month that you actually have your blood drawn, because estrogen is very high in the beginning of your cycle and very low at the end. Now, if you're in menopause already, which means you haven't had a period for a year, then you can pretty much test it anytime. But for those of you who are perimenopausal and you're fluctuating, if you know where you are in your cycle, we want to look at kind of those a little more differently. Also, you can do it with saliva. Same type of thing. We may want to look at a different time of the month. And if you're doing it with urine and you're still actively cycling, we want to do days like 18 to 21. So basically day 18, 19, 20 is when we want to do the urine, like if we're going to do a Dutch test. So know that just like, okay, I'm going to go see my PCP on the first of the month, and I don't know where I am with my cycle, but I still cycle. You're not going to get as accurate of a reading if you do that. Now, also, love that friends help you, love that you read things and you hear about, oh, here's an estrogen support supplement, and I'm going to try that. But be very, very careful. Hormones are very specific. So a lot of people will recommend, oh, I had hot flashes, so I did DIM, or oh, I used CDG, which is calcium D-glucarate. But if you don't have high estrogen, if you actually have low estrogen, you're going to make it even lower. These do, go in and pull them out of your system. More importantly, I'd rather see you fire up your liver and fire up your bowels, because in order to get estrogen out of your body, in order to get things regulated, you've got to have good bowel movements so things can conjugate and the toxins can be removed, and the liver's got to be able to process it. Remember, estrogen goes through the liver 2 times. So if you have a small amount of it, it goes through the liver first time, it becomes more toxic, has to go through the liver the second time to become less toxic. So part of getting this balance of perimenopause and weight gain is, are your other organs functioning? So, do you have good liver function? Do you have good bowel function? Dr. Lara was talking about, do you have sluggish bowels? You're kind of sluggish all over, and maybe you have some constipation or things aren't going. We got to jazz that up a little bit. We got to get things moving. You've got to I call it the Asian nation: perspiration, respiration, defecation, urination. All of those need to be moving, because you've got to get the good stuff in, the bad stuff out, in order for us to really get you regulated. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And, a lot of it, when we consider, the cortisol, okay, cortisol, when we start stressing our bodies, or when we are in stress, not sleeping well, our cortisol levels start to spike. And that in itself, you don't even have to be perimenopausal or menopausal, to have weight gain with higher cortisol levels and with higher stress. So, I mean, that only compounds the situation.
Sure.
And we need to have, healthier working methylation pathway, the breakdown of that neurotransmitter, of these hormones, and the clearance of them in order, to get them out of our system. And this is really important to make sure that we are supporting our bodies based on our DNA, but also based on, our current lifestyle and the toxins that you are being exposed to, so that can be done correctly. And again, this is exactly why having this information and working with someone who knows what they're doing and in that personalization, because there's so many other factors. Yes, your DNA is that foundational blueprint, but that's just one piece of the puzzle. We also have to look at your history. What are you going through? What toxins have you been exposed to? How is your sleep? Because maybe there are some things that could actually be changed within your lifestyle, your sleep hygiene, your environment, that could help support better sleep, that could help alleviate some of the symptoms while you are going through these transitions. That, it's not like, oh, jumping right to hormone replacement, even though sometimes that could be a catalyst for better change. But what to do first, that's where working with a practitioner really is the best way to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that I don't think we talk about enough that really helps is mineral balance,
Yes.
electrolytes. You've got to have your sodium, potassium, magnesium in order for all of your different mechanisms metabolically in your body to work. Magnesium alone is in over 300 metabolic processes. I can tell you that there's type 1 sleep deficiency, which means you have trouble falling asleep, and there's type 2, which means I wake up. I always thought my type 2, once I went into menopause, was having to do with my liver clearing at 3 in the morning. Well, one of the things that I learned several years later was I did hair tissue mineral analysis. I cut some of my hair at the root, went and had the minerals analyzed, and I was depleted in all 4 minerals. They call that a 4 low. So I had been running and running and running and running and running. And all the major life changes that people have at menopause, let's think about this. You've got fussy teenagers, or that you've got early adults that are going through their early adult drama, whether it's boyfriend, girlfriends, or marriages, or moving away, or colleges, or all of the things. You've got aging parents and their health problems. You've got midlife marital issues. Maybe you're no longer in love with somebody. Maybe they're problems. Maybe you're thinking about leaving. Maybe you've already left. Maybe you're remaking yourself. I no longer love my career. All of those are stressful, and all of those deplete your minerals. So really, if you will add electrolytes to your water every day, all day, drink water, 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 water. If you realize that every cola you drink, whether it's pop, soda, whatever, all those fizzies that are phosphoric acid, it draws calcium out of your bones, okay, and forms in a calcium phosphate. And more women we're seeing with kidney stones because they'll have a soda, and that a little bit of sugar and caffeine gives them a lift, but they're starting to deplete their minerals. They deplete their bones. Then they're throwing themselves toward osteoporosis. Then they're crashing their blood sugar because of the corn syrup, and they're crashing their mineral balances because of phosphoric acid. And it's like, oh my gosh, let's get you some flavored electrolyte water. I just like mine, I put sea salt in it, I put potassium chloride in it, and I take the thing that got me over after I took ashwagandha, I took CBD, I took melatonin, I took the thing that got me over my type 2 insomnia was topical magnesium oil. I rub magnesium oil on my feet and my lower legs before bed. I allow it to dry. I do both legs, and I am out like a light, and I stay until morning. And if I had, even with all of the background I have in nutrition, even with all the background I have in drugs, I looked at every mechanism, but I wasn't paying attention to my minerals. And my body said magnesium. And if you look at our wonderful sleep optimizer, we have the magnesium biglycinate and some other great things in there. That is a great place to start to see maybe you're magnesium deficient. And when you sleep and that cortisol comes down, guess what? You can start to lose that weight when that stress comes down. And Lara is so good at one, managing her stress, and two, teaching other people how to. I am not quite as good as that. I still go, 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 go. People are like, you're always so busy. I'm like, I like it that way.
You are
But but I deplete my magnesium. So now I've learned I need more omega-3s. I need more magnesium. And then I use my PEMF machine to put me in parasympathetic mode so I can chill. But I'll tell you, I've gotten through and now I sleep fabulous. So I'm in my 60s sleeping again like I was in my 20s and 30s. And that is pretty amazing.
That's wonderful. And I'll tell you, stress will deplete your magnesium stores faster than anything.
Yeah.
So it's all the more that if you are highly stressed, you're going to need to take more magnesium, or you're going to have to get more magnesium into your body, whether it is through oral form, a transdermal, with the creams or the oils that she's talking about, or even an Epsom salt bath.
I was going to say Epsom salt bath, hot bath
Sulfate.
before bed.
It is wonderful. Not to mention the heat of the bath actually helps to open up, to dilate the capillaries. And what that does is it allows, after you get out, the blood to cool off some as it comes back to the heart, because you need to have your core body temperature drop 2 to 3 degrees in order for you to really get into a good deep sleep and stay asleep. Because I've mentioned this before, like in our sleep webinars, the 4 pillars of good sleep: QQRT, quantity, quality, regularity, and timing. And part of falling asleep, you need to warm up to cool down to fall asleep. You need to stay cool to stay asleep, and you need to warm up to wake up. So you have to work with your body's temperature in order to support good sleep. And then, backing that up and how you do that during your sleep hygiene as you are getting ready for bed, doing those things, taking the magnesium. And actually, magnesium threonate is fantastic. Not only does it give you the magnesium, but the molecular size is small enough that it crosses the blood-brain barrier. Yes, it helps to give energy to your brain, because it is important to note that you have to have magnesium attached to ATP, adenosine triphosphate, the energy currency of the cell, in order for it to be bioavailable. So you need that magnesium. So for people who have brain fog, well, there's not enough energy being produced. Well, part of the reason may be because you don't have enough magnesium to make it bioavailable. So with all of these things, it can come down to some simple changes. Make those changes, see how they work for you. If you're still having issues, then turn another dial, add another, recommendation, or add another change until you start accumulating these wonderful changes and start really moving that needle and feeling the difference.
I know it doesn't, you can't believe it's already 6 o'clock, but we've got some questions we need to answer.
Yes, we do. And actually, I was kind of glancing at them when you were talking, and there was actually someone who had said something about, I remember seeing it, and we kind of were answering some of the question. Hang on, because there was one about.
Well, while you're doing that, while you're looking around, Elizabeth, she said magnesium threonate. It's THERONATE, threonate, TH. And I might even be able to type it out for you. Hold on. Let's see if I can do this.
Maybe it was in the chat. I remember seeing something about. Oh, darn. I'll find it. Anyway. Okay.
Yep, Lynn, you got it. Perfect.
Actually, there was a question about any good recommendations for constipation. And the reason I bring this up is because magnesium citrate.
Well, okay, I'm gonna hold you back on that one.
Well, that can help. Okay. Especially if you're needing to loosen some stools, as far as having magnesium. One of the ways that if you're taking too much magnesium is disaster pants. Your stools get
Yeah,
very
I was going to say
hot.
magnesium citrate, I do not like to recommend. Magnesium citrate causes a huge flushing like you're going to do before colonoscopy. If you want to do gentle movement, I'd rather see you do magnesium
Mescaline.
oxide.
Uh,
Okay. Magnesium oxide will give you a softer movement, a more predictable movement. I love to use Calm. Calm is a magnesium, not oxide. Let me think. Not a carbonate. I'll have to think what it is. I could even go downstairs and grab some, or I can look it up real quickly. Calm is a lemon raspberry flavored powder that you can make it warm, like a tea at night, or you can make it cold, like a lemonade, and drink that before bed. That'll give you a nice, easy movement. Most people overdo magnesium citrate, which is a liquid, which is used for total bowel emptying. The problem with that big flush, like Dr. Lara said, is that then you deplete yourself of all your other electrolytes and you can get into problems. So I've watched people get hospitalized with magnesium citrate because they overdo it. It looks like a little Coke bottle and they're like, oh, I'll just take the whole bottle. And then they will have
oh,
diarrhea for 2 days.
yeah.
If you're talking a
No, definitely
tablespoon
not
or
that.
two, maybe. But I like the Calm better or the magnesium oxide tablets that you can control. And it's about 400, 500 milligrams of magnesium that tends to do the best. Is that kind of what you find too, Lara?
Yeah, but I was talking about more the capsule form, just doing,
Oh,
like a couple 100 milligrams, just to help lightly loosen along with others. Because I do a blend myself, where it has several forms of magnesium. Because magnesium bisglycinate actually is a bit easier on the stomach, and Calm has magnesium glycinate and magnesium oxide in it.
so actually Sandy says the magnesium, the Calm is mag citrate. Now I didn't think that it was. The liquid one is the one that I don't like. The liquid
Yeah,
one that
no,
is
I
a
don't.
bottle.
I
Oh
don't
my
like.
gosh, that gets so
No.
many people in trouble.
Yeah.
So thank
No,
you,
and
Sandy, for
and
looking that up.
and thank you for, commenting on that, for the clarity of that, because I mean, like I said, I personally have some magnesium and magnesium citrate, but not in totality.
Yeah.
I just have a little bit of it, and it does help to loosen because I get a little constipated, especially when I travel. Um, but there are other herbs, like, I'll drink the tea Smooth Moves tea by Traditional Medicinals. Love that. Just, nice, easy, depends on the issue. I mean, if you are severely constipated, though, that's something that you should definitely speak with your practitioner or healthcare provider about, because maybe there's a deeper issue going on there that you definitely need to have checked. But I like to periodically do enemas, coffee enemas, just for clearance, just to kind of clear everything out. I do that
Okay,
as
let's
part
talk
of the thing.
coffee enemas because I am really resistant. I have not done one of those. I know all my cancer friends are like, oh my God, I swear by it. But I'm like, seriously, I drink coffee. I don't need to do a coffee enema. So talk to me about your coffee enema, girl.
That is so cute. I mean, I love coffee enemas. I use them as
Why?
why? Well, actually, what it is, it really works into the fact of what it is doing. Now, when we're talking about, the liver drainage, everything else, I mean, the liver really is the heaviest lifter of our natural detox systems, and we want to be able to support that. And a lot of times, especially due to all the toxins that we become exposed to, that causes stagnation, really jams up the stream. Okay.
Mhm.
And when we want to support that, when we want to help clean out, and like I said, I do recommend coffee enemas, not blanket. Obviously, it is personalized when I do detoxification protocols with my clients, but most of my clients are able to handle it, to be able to utilize coffee enemas. Coffee enemas support the mechanical clean out of the colon, but they do so much more than that. It's the palmitic acid crystals in coffee enemas that travel up to the hepatic portal vein from the descending colon directly to the liver. And these crystals, they jump.
Now, I'm in medicine, and that was a mouthful. You're going to have to slow down and explain that for the average person. Thank you very much.
Okay, so palmitic acid, it's one of the compounds in the coffee. Now, when you're doing an enema in the large, in the descending colon, in the large colon, okay, when you're putting that coffee up your bum, of course, I usually do, it's like I do a glass mason jar, 32 ounces. Okay, I'll fill that in my enema bucket, and I'll, get that in me. And then I'll hold it for
So
as
wait a
long as I
minute, wait a
can.
minute. You started this. So you take 32 ounces, you
Yes.
put it in,
Uh-huh.
you retain it. So you've
Yes.
used a enema bag, and then it goes in
Well, I use
rectally.
a bucket personally, a stainless steel bucket
Okay. But
instead of a
then you've
bag.
got the tube, and you've got,
Yes.
okay. So then you've
Silicone.
inserted it. You're
Yes.
holding
Yes.
32 ounces.
Correct.
I'm assuming you're lying down in a
Correct.
bathtub. Okay.
Yes.
I'm just being really graphic for everybody, because somebody hears that and they're like, how the heck am I supposed to do that? Okay. And
Slowly.
yeah. So how long do you retain?
Well, I retain it for about 15 minutes. But
Okay.
some
And what
people,
if you think you're going to die and go, oh my gosh, I can't hold it? What do you do?
well, I mean, I will say that if you've never done an enema before, and if you've never done this, you probably won't make it to 15 minutes. It may just be a minute or two, and you just kind of have to work your way up
So
and
maybe do a little bit less, maybe do a
a little
cup.
bit less, right? But you have to kind of work yourself up to that. But you're saying, what do I do? So this is what I do. Excuse me. I retain it for 15 minutes, and then I sit my little bum on the toilet and
And you're
let it
eliminating.
go.
Now, I just looked
Right.
up benefits of coffee enemas. This
Mhm.
does go along with hormones and weight loss, I will tell you.
Oh, yes.
One, liver detox stimulates the liver and gallbladder to release more bile. Okay. The caffeine is absorbed through the colon, goes to the portal vein, increases our glutathione S transferase. Remember, the glutathione genes are some of the most important that we do, and it neutralizes free radicals while flushing out the toxins. I didn't know that part.
Yes,
Okay.
because it will actually increase glutathione production by up to 700%
Okay.
for
See, this is
several
good. You may be
hours.
talking me into one. Okay. Two, I can see we're going to have to talk to Tracy about having a coffee enema webinar.
Challenge.
Okay. A coffee enema challenge. Oh my gosh. Two, improves bile flow. Bile flow, for all of you who may not realize this is your fat digestion. We've been talking about fat and weight gain, removal of waste, including excessive estrogens, hormones. Okay. The coffee is believed to dilate the bile ducts, smoother bile excretion, potentially reducing estrogen dominance and balancing hormones. Okay. I knew we were going to tie this all back into hormones for you.
Yep.
Three, colon cleansing. This is a temporary increase in mental clarity and energy due to a reduced toxic load and elimination, improves the gut brain connection and communication. Okay. Let's see. So that's mental clarity. Five, mood and stress. It has supports the liver with the reduced inflammation. Beneficial side effects is that it triggers the vagal nerve to trigger the parasympathetic, which is the calm and relax. Now, I'm having a little bit of trouble thinking about coffee rectally for 15 minutes calming me, but looking at you, you do glow, so perhaps, okay? And then best is because of the regular detoxification, the hormonal balance, it is extremely beneficial for adrenal fatigue, sluggish thyroid, and estrogen dominance. Now, I have no problem with enemas, and I have no problem. I've administered dozens and dozens and dozens of them, but I never understood the coffee aspect. I know, again, in cancer, they recommend them.
Yeah, that's actually
And
the
now I'm beginning to
physician.
see why with all the liver detox.
Yeah, the physician Max Gerson,
Yeah,
Gerson, used coffee enemas in his therapy protocol, the
he
Gerson
did.
therapy, and found that it was especially useful in working with this cancer patients. So,
Okay, I think you just talked me into one. Okay, so everybody who's still here, one, if you're willing to take the coffee enema challenge. Two, if you've had enough, you just want to drink it in the morning. So let's see the ones and twos if we're going to do a coffee enema challenge and a detox. We may have to do a whole webinar on why that's important.
so if you're interested in doing a coffee enema challenge, put a 1 in the chat.
And if we don't get any takers, then I'll do it myself and you and I can do a webinar.
Okay.
All right, we got some. Look at this. Look at all
Yeah,
these ones. Okay, OMG. Paula is out. She said, no way. But Katie said, or Chris said, for sure. Oh my
yes.
gosh.
And
Allison, you were on here. You saw this. We're going to do a detox webinar with a coffee enema challenge.
I am laughing right now, ladies. So much laughter happening. Thank you.
and I do have a specific protocol. And I did see in the chat someone saying, oh, well, is there a specific coffee that, you're not to use regular coffee? And yes, I do use a specific coffee. It is an organic therapeutic blend. I have no affiliation to the company, but the one I specifically use is by Cafe Mam, M-A-M. So CAFE-MAM, two words, Cafe Mam. So that's the one that I use. And there are specific tips and prep and the way to go. And I've actually created
we are so doing this
protocol
webinar
for this. So I have all of this information laid out, how you do it, little tips and tricks on not to, have a mess. So.
Oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Okay.
Karen, I'm sure there's some contraindications. We will go through that in the webinar. Katie says she does 2 to 3 a year based on her naturopath's recommendation. Now, Joy did one last Saturday and is still sluggish and tired. That says to me, you have a sluggish liver and you need to do another one. You need to do another one. Lara, would you agree with that since you've done them and I'm not? And I'm talking out of my ass? No.
Well, I will say when I do certain detox protocols, I will initially have them do 1 a day, or 3 to 5 times a week. And I'll tell you, I enjoy doing them and feeling cleaned out. I will do it, just on a maintenance, like once a week or once every other week. If I feel like I need a little extra, then, I'll do it. I'll tell you, there was resistance at first, with like, I'm putting what, where, and
okay, we will put together, and for all the powers, our wonderful angels, for DNA angels, we're going to put together a kit, that they, or a reference to a kit. We're going to put together a protocol so that they will know. We will send this out in advance for everybody who wants to join the webinar, register for the webinar. We're going to send out a pre-advance because this is going to be a participatory. So we'll say, this is what it's going to be. We want you to try it beforehand. Here's the thing. If you don't want to try it beforehand, you'll try it after, but that way we can get engagement because we want to have your feedback. So I love that Joy said that she will do another one. She now realizes, and she said, I wonder if I washed out my electrolytes. You know what? You probably didn't wash your electrolytes out, but I bet you're depleted anyway. So up those electrolytes, do another one to flush that liver, and let's have a real clean diet for the next few days and see if that doesn't pop your energy up. Good. Yeah. I love that. All right, let's jump over. And who knew that the constipation was going to get us that much interest? Sally asked about DIM, sulforaphanes, and calcium glucarate. We kind of answered that. Too much is too much. So Sally, you really need to know your levels. In this case, I would say you need to have a Dutch test so you know which pathways you're going down, because you don't, if you're going down the proper 2 pathway and you start doing DIM and calcium D-glucarate, you could deplete that and start pushing it down a 4-hydroxy or a 16-hydroxy, which we don't want. So without a Dutch test, I would not add those, or a 24-hour urine test. Can you fix your hormones without HRT? Absolutely, you can. I don't think as effectively, but one of our partners we'd love to recommend is the FENMAR, FENMMAR, FENMAR program. Does it all with food and all naturally. Marianne Stewart is out of England. She now lives in Florida. She's been doing this for over a decade. She'd helped thousands of women. And she's delightful. So the FEMMAR program is a great way to do it without HRT, though I love my BHRT and I will stay on it forever.
Yes. And I'll tell you, we did a podcast. Actually, Dr. Stephanie interviewed her on our podcast. So I would highly recommend going back, searching for that and listening to it. It's a very powerful interview.
And she is so good. NPR has been following her and they're creating a whole TV series around what she's done, where she came from, how it all started. Her husband was a physician and all these women kept coming in with perimenopausal symptoms. And he's like, I don't know what to do with them. And that goes way back to what Lara said about women are underrepresented in medical studies. And a lot of, at least back then, because she's in her 70s, all of the physicians were men and they're like, I don't know what to do with her. And she's like, well, you've got to help these women. And he said, well, you figure it out and then I'll do it. So his clinic became very popular because she figured out how to manage this naturally. And then they've since separated and she kept the program because it was her program and then just exploded it, which is wonderful. So Alicia says, I had a hysterectomy due to a BRCA1 positive gene. I'm taking estradiol, but I have brain fog and tinnitus. Which test do you recommend to check levels? So first of all, have you done your insulin sensitivity? 2, did you get COVID shots? There's a ton of side effects with tinnitus that I'm seeing post-COVID shots. 3, the biggest thing I would say is chronic inflammation, chronic inflammation, chronic inflammation. We've got to get that chronic inflammation down. I would do an omega-3, omega-6 test. My favorite is Enzino. You can do an omega quant. There's a lot of them out there, but I like the real complete ones. And then look at to lower your omega-6 level, up your omega-3. And with tinnitus, a lot of times low zinc levels is caused. So I would up your zinc 15 milligrams, 20 milligrams, maybe even up to 50. But brain fog is, again, instantly inflammation. How about the next one for you, Lara, or one of the next ones?
Donna is saying, I'd love ideas on when you're eating perfect and cannot lose weight. I'm nearly 0 carbs and my blood glucose is running at an average of 125. She started a CGM about a month ago, so she knows her numbers. She said, I did get a urine hormone test and the biggest shock was my stress hormones were off the charts, which I think is maybe a reason why I can't lose weight. Any ideas? Yeah, you got that. Absolutely. Like I had mentioned earlier in what we were talking about, cortisol levels, when they are that high, that just really disrupts your ability to lose weight. It throws your insulin sensitivity off. Yes. So things that you can do. Start the day off calm. Now you're like, how the hell do I do that? Seeing that cortisol is highest in the morning, depending on what your lifestyle is, on what you do, avoid jumping on screens or immediately going to workouts. Try 10 minutes of breath work, light sun exposure upon waking, doing initial gratitude and setting the intention for the day. So, really calming your system, getting yourself in that parasympathetic nervous system, activating vagal tone, which, by the way, I don't know if you guys knew, but humming, gargling, doing those things, that actually helps to stimulate vagal tone.
Yodeling. Yodeling.
Yes. Beautiful. I love it. So you really want to have your system a little bit more calm. You could also try things like adaptogens. Now, again, I say this in a general sense because I'm not your practitioner. I don't know your history, and so again, I would work with a practitioner who does know your history for a better, precise, personalized plan. But adaptogens, things like ashwagandha, rhodiola, phosphatidylserine in the late afternoon or early evening can help blunt that evening cortisol when you're wired at night. Or, I mean, I personally, and again, this is just an offering of something that I do, is that I take phosphatidylserine in the evening, which helps to keep my morning cortisol, kind of dampen it a little bit, because I tend to, to jump a little bit high, that I had seen when I did my Dutch test. I saw that it was really spiking, and that has definitely helped. So, but also doing things like sound or light therapy, using, things like brain tap or heart math, red light therapy, HRV biofeedback, things like that, that can really help to reset your HPA axis. So that's the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis over time. And then things like, maybe rethinking the fasting and meal timing, maybe eat within 30 to 60 minutes of waking, especially that protein and fat that Dr. Stephanie was talking about, because that really helps ground cortisol and blunt that gluconeogenesis, which is that production of glucose from the liver, which can happen in times of high cortisol stress. But
Well,
also,
and I would also say carb cycling. You're doing zero carbs, your body is locked down and it's going, I may never see another carbohydrate again. I'm not letting go of anything that I have. So whether you carb cycle every 3 or 4 days, or whether you go a very low carb, I would not do near zero. I would probably up my carbs a little short term, and then I would have a day of hardcore. So like you have, 6 really strict days and one fat splurge day. And here's why. Because what happens is, if you're too low, your body, if the insulin gets too high, then, you're in storage mode. If the insulin gets too low, then you're in starvation mode, and the body holds on to everything. If you give it this day of splurge of carbohydrates, it goes, oh, I'm in the land of plenty, no problem. And you will lower your body's fat set point. And when you lower the fat set point, then you can start burning carbs again, or start burning fat again. So I think you've just locked yourself down by being too strict. I am not a fan of super strict anything.
yeah.
Just because, well, I am for the gluten-free for people, just because if you're a celiac. But other than that, be a little gentler on yourself. Be a little gentler.
And also realize that too long of fasts, that puts your body in a stressed state. So, in that high stress or increasing stresses on your body, that fasting can actually backfire.
Yeah.
So you really—
We've got 3 minutes, Lara. We got to fire
goodness.
through these.
Holy
Okay.
moly.
Is there
Wow.
a specific CGM that you know, like, and love? The probably the
Nutrisense
most popular, the CGM.
levels.
Dexcom is the most popular right now, easiest to get covered. However, if you don't have insurance coverage for it, Dexcom has an OTC version called Stelo, Stelo. They're about $80, $90 a month. On insurance, a lot of times you can get them for about $45. Most insurances won't cover them unless you're going too low, or you have a diabetes or a metabolic syndrome type thing. If you're paying cash, there are some of the other ones I'm blanking. I can see it. It's yellow. I'll think of it in a second. Again, you can get them for $45 to $60 for the sensor. But I like the Stelo just because it goes along with the Dexcom. And if you have a provider, they can log in and watch your stuff. So, and even if you do it they last 2 weeks. And even if you do it 2 weeks or a month, you've got enough data that you can go, oh, I see what's going on. You don't have to do it forever, forever, forever. Okay. Ella says, doctors are resistant to doing fasting, insulin her gastroenterologist, she couldn't persuade him to do it. That's because they don't know how to use it. I use mine to make HOMA, which is homeostatic metabolic assessment, and it's HOMA. You can order it for about $50 yourself through any of the online, like Direct Labs, or going direct to some of the other laboratories where you can order, or with an order for you. They're about $50. You can get a fasting insulin and then use your glucose, and you can figure out your HOMA yourself. No. Do you want to do Sally?
Sure. Why is it that women who have had hysterectomies do not gain the menopausal weight gain? I have noticed this in all women I know who have had a hysterectomy. Well, I do have to say that's actually unfortunately not true.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't find that
because I have family members who have had hysterectomies and who have had problems with weight gain. So maybe it was just the population that you're around, but no, actually it's not the
most
case.
of them are on some type of HRT anyway. And so at least that's what I found. But I have found hysterectomies instantly throw people into
Right.
menopausal situations, and they have immediate weight gain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What day of the cycle should you consider testing hormones when you're planning blood work? So it depends if you're doing the estrogen, progesterone, again, I would do that day 18 to 21, that it will be a rise of the progesterone, a low in your estrogen. So know that, if your estrogen's high and you're supposed to, and it's on a low day, then you're really high. I would not test it at the beginning. So it's like mid to mid late. At the very end, you don't want to do it. In the very beginning, you don't want to do it. So again, 18 to 21 is a good crossover day. And so we can look at it, especially going, this is our estrogen in the low level, this is our progesterone on a rise, and that's how we get it from there.
Next question is from Jan. If you're having trouble losing weight in days when your energy is low and your hair thinning, isn't that all signs of estrogen dominance? Well, yeah, I mean, you are touching on something really important. And yes, those symptoms can be connected to estrogen dominance, but there's a bit of more of a nuance there. And we don't have enough time to really unpack all of that. But I want you to be aware that estrogen dominance doesn't just mean too much estrogen. A lot of times it means that estrogen is high relative to low progesterone, even if the absolute amount of estrogen levels aren't sky high. It could be poor estrogen metabolism. It could be increased sensitivity to estrogen at the tissue level. I mean, there's so many different things. And I think that this is also an area of discussion that we could dive into in another webinar, because unfortunately we don't have enough time to really dive into the nuances on that. Okay, so Sharon is asking, what would help with orthostatic hypotension that comes on with perimenopause? What do you think, Stephanie?
Blood sugar, first of all, electrolytes, second of all, eating enough protein, third of all. So orthostatic hypotension is you are sitting down or laying down and you pop up and your blood pressure just drops. So during perimenopause, we've got the estrogen declines and changes. Yes, that's a big part of it, but I would look at your electrolytes. I'd look at your insulin sensitivity. Just a general thing that I tell people is, especially elderly people, because a lot of elderly people have orthostatic. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, take a big deep breath. Prepare yourself to stand up. I mean, you got to get yourself ready, and then boom, you're up. Okay. So especially if you started noticing, woo, that was a little too much. You've got some of your vagal nerve is dysregulated. Do some breathing exercises for your vagal nerve. So big part of it's prep, electrolytes, and then checking your insulin.
And our last question is from Caitlin. How important is high intensity exercise in losing the menopause weight gain? Well, that's something that it actually can be very helpful, but you also need to know some other aspects to it because it can backfire, especially when you're talking about stress hormones being dysregulated. So again, this is something that working with someone, who knows a bit more, and with some tests, for example, check to see what your cortisol is first. You need to regulate your cortisol. Okay. So even starting off with walking, especially morning sun exposure, you need to make sure that you reset your circadian rhythm and, your cortisol levels are balanced. Doing things like yoga, Pilates, slow strength. You want to maintain muscle without spiking the stress. And then maybe adding some resistance training, and then layer in that HIIT exercise wisely. But again, in order to be more personalized for what works for you, or if you are someone who can go right into starting a HIIT exercise, maybe that could work. But again, working with someone who knows and can look at your genes, because that can definitely play an impactful factor, your lifestyle, what your current levels are. Really, that's the way to go. So that way you're not just, trying all these different things, throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks, and also not making the work that you're putting in backfire, because that really sucks. So anyway, I hope that this information has been helpful and useful to you, that you're walking away with some pearls of information. And I'll tell you, I'm really excited about the coffee enema challenge. So if this is something that you want to keep hearing about, learning about, having some time for us to dive in a little bit deeper, a little bit more specific, digging in the weeds of information about women, hormones, going through these changes and how they affect your life, and how the genes work into this, please let us know. Let us know what you want to hear more about, because we are here for you. And I want to say thank you so much, Dr. Stephanie, for being here this evening, for joining us and making this such a fun, educational, and entertaining webinar. And definitely want to thank all of you for joining us. So until then, I would like to say again, thank you, and I look forward to the next one. How about you, Dr. Stephanie?
Absolutely. Thank you for your brilliance. We appreciate you so much. Everybody, thanks for staying to the end. We appreciate you. God bless. Be well. And remember that Gabby is available to do those one-on-ones. She is a brilliant pharmacist who is new with us, and she would love to help you do a one-on-one consultation. Reach out to her. I think you guys got her email, but in case you didn't, let me give it to you real quickly. It's like Gabby.Gutierrez. Gabby, if you want to drop it in real quickly so that I can tell them what it is, that'd be great. Dr. Gabby is awesome. Actually, just reach out
meet with me.
Yeah, just reach out to the DNA company and they can connect you with Gabby. All right, guys, take care. Good night. God bless.